Joining us right here from Fox Sports and The Athletic, our friend back here in his usual spot, although on Tuesday, because Wednesday's a big, huge college football day. Bruce Feldman. Good to chat with you, Bruce. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing good. Your alma mater distracted me so much I didn't even realize what the time was.
Look at that. I know. How about those ReliaQuest Wolverines right now? Can we stop the game right now? Can it be stopped right? I couldn't even imagine if Michigan finishes the season with back-to-back wins against Ohio State and Alabama. Turn the machines back on, Bruce. You know?
It's mind-blowing to me in this regard. Alabama is actually one of the few teams in one of these bowl games and not a playoff game where their best players are playing. Jalen Milroe's out there, Tyler Booker's out there, Jihad Campbell. Those are like their three best draft prospects. They're playing in the game. Everybody who's really, who the NFL covers from Michigan, Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant, Colston Loveland, they're not playing. Josiah Stewart's not playing. And Michigan has dominated this game. Who saw this coming?
Well, we have a half to go, but while I have you here, in the few minutes I have with you here, what happened with Cam Ward in his bowl game, Bruce?
He played half of the game and that was it. And then at halftime, my understanding is he basically just, said, "Hey, Emory Williams, it's, his turn and I'm done." And that was it. I mean, I'll be honest. I'm surprised that there was this kind of uproar on social media about this. Cam Ward actually played in the game. Most of the guys who are in bowl games, who are in the top 50 draft class, prospects, they're not playing. They're opting out. I mean, Ward's three of his, top four receivers opted out of the game. So the fact that he even played at all, much less played a half, surprised me a little bit. And so the fact that he left at halftime and, I don't think that was anything to be stunned by or upset by. I mean, there's a lot of guys who didn't play. I just rattled off a bunch of guys who chose not to play in the bowl games at all. I mean, this is a guy who I think a lot of people expect to be a top 10 pick, and he went out and played, for a half of the game. That's more than Miami fans probably should have expected.
No doubt about it. I can say this, the fact that he played and rather than not does show you something. That's one thing, that he did want to compete for at least a half. But I can guarantee you this is going to be the first question of him in every single greaseboard conversation at the combine that Cam Ward has. Tell me what happened in the bowl game. And he's going to tell us whatever the story is. Like, hey, do we know what the story is? I wanted to play, and then I decided, you know what? The only plan was to play a half because I just wanted to be out there with the guys. Like, that's what I'm asking, because I do understand your approach that, hey, half's better than nothing. To just say I'm leaving everybody on the battlefield, if that's the way you want to put it.
My understanding, Rich, was that he had, that he had a discussion with their staff, and there was going to be somewhere along the lines of I think he knew if I don't play at all, a bunch of other guys are going to opt out. So he ended up playing, and look, he played really well. He threw three touchdowns in the first half against a good pass defense in Iowa State. I mean, I think it's like a top 5 pass defense. And then, that was it. I mean, I get the point you're saying about NFL teams are going to ask it. NFL teams ask every question, though. And, I'm sure they had those questions about Christian McCaffrey, who didn't play in a bowl game a long time ago. And now most like I said, most of the top guys, I went back and looked at this, are Dane Brugler, who does a really good job for The Athletic on the draft, of his top 50 board. It's 5 of the top 16 guys who are not in the playoff have opted out. Will Campbell at LSU, obviously the Michigan guys I mentioned, Caleb Johnson, a really good running back at Iowa. The guys who chose to play were Deion Sanders, 2 key guys, Shador, his son, and Travis Hunter. I mean, those guys have a connection with Deion that's much stronger than just, hey, a normal player coach. But beyond that, it's really just, it's almost most of those guys are not playing in bowl games.
Bruce Feldman here from Fox Sports and The Athletic. Break down the Fiesta Bowl for me tonight. How do you think this one plays out? Penn State versus Boise State in the quarterfinal game in the Fiesta Bowl.
I think that Ashton Genty's going to still, do a lot of damage. He's the best running back in college football. I don't think Penn State's going to totally derail him. I mean, I don't know if he's going to go for over 200 yards. I think he's going to need to go over to probably 250, rushing and receiving at least for Boise State to be able to win this game. Boise State does not have a really good defense. Their defensive line is pretty good and they're really aggressive. You'll see a lot of 6 and 7 man pressures. Talking to coaches who played Boise State in the Mountain West, they said Eric Shenander, their defense coordinator, is a blitz maniac, is how they describe him. It's not like Penn State has Ohio State's receivers, but I think we could say Drew Aller doing a lot of damage downfield because he's going to have opportunities. And he is talented. I mean, we know he's got 2 big-time running backs, and Tyler Warren's a terrific tight end. Receivers are okay. They're not great. I think they could have a big night tonight, though.
And then the triple header on New Year's Day, the marquee, clearly the granddaddy of them all, right here in the Rose Bowl. What is the key in your estimation between Ohio State and Oregon?
I really think it comes back to what happens in the trenches of this game. Can Oregon's defensive line, which leads the Big Ten in sacks, really get after Will Howard like Michigan did, quite honestly? I think Michigan's going to be, I think Ohio State's going to be more aggressive in the pass game than certainly they were, when they played the Wolverines. But I think that's a challenge for them because their offensive line is the weakest link of a really strong team across the board in Columbus. The flip side of this is going to be, Ohio State's defensive line, which is good. I mean, they have a lot of really good players, 2 really experienced defensive ends. They only managed 2 tackles for loss in the whole game when they lost at Autzen at midseason. No sacks and 2 tackles for losses. I mean, that was a really rough night. Ohio State's defensive front has to be a lot more disruptive getting after Dylan Gabriel, or else I don't think he's going to pick them apart and easily, but they're really good. They don't have big receivers, but they have really quick athletic receivers, and they have good running backs, and they have a good scheme. So Dylan Gabriel's the quarterback that I have the most confidence in of anybody left in this playoff field. He's played in a lot of big games and played well. And like I said, they have good receivers. If Ohio State's defensive line doesn't show up in a big way, Buckeyes are going to struggle again.
Is Ryan Day's job on the line? Does the result matter? Does the result matter? The manner in which they would play if they do get bounced by the top seed in this tournament?
Right now? I think the only way Ryan Day wouldn't be the coach at Ohio State is if Ryan Day doesn't want to be the coach at Ohio State anymore. I just think that, this is a team. You saw what they did against Tennessee. They blew Tennessee off the field. I mean, it wasn't even close, and he's won a ton of games. I know he has had a Michigan problem, but beyond that, and I think that who are you going to get if you're Ohio State and have you convinced that, oh yeah, he's going to do better than this guy, what he's done there? I mean, it wouldn't at all surprise me if they ended up beating Oregon by 2 touchdowns, and it wouldn't surprise me if they won a national title. I mean, I think that he has done a really good job there. And I think if you look at the big picture of that, I think it's easier to see through that than it is to all the noise that's come out of that last game that he had against Michigan.
How do you see Notre Dame, Georgia playing out, Bruce?
I think they're really similar, Rich. They're 2 good defensive teams, don't have great receivers. Running quarterbacks now, because now you got Gunnar Stockton in there as opposed to Carson Beck for Georgia. I think what's going to be interesting in this matchup is, can Notre Dame exploit some of the same things that Georgia Tech did late in the year when they almost beat them in like that 8 overtime game at the end of the regular season? What's telling there is Georgia Tech had a really smart game plan. Their offensive coordinator, before he was the offensive coordinator at Georgia Tech, spent 3 years at Georgia. He knew that team inside and out and that system inside and out. His quarterback, Haynes King, is a good running quarterback. Riley Leonard, Notre Dame's quarterback, is a really, really good running quarterback. He is strong. He is tough. He can run. And I think the advantage Notre Dame has that Georgia Tech didn't have is they have Jeremiah Love, who's an explosive running back. He's more talented than anybody Georgia Tech had as the second piece of that quarterback run game. Georgia, like a lot of teams, their kryptonite has been really mobile quarterbacks, and a bunch of guys. You could look even the Kentucky game, as bad as Kentucky is. Brock Vandegrift ran the ball actually really well. I don't 70 rushing yards if you take away all the sack yards against them when they gave Georgia a good game. I do think Notre Dame with Riley Leonard in the run game can take advantage of some stuff. I would not at all be surprised if Notre Dame got its biggest postseason win in like 30 years against Georgia tomorrow.
Wow, that so you would peg. I mean, Texas beating. I guess Arizona State beating Texas would be the upset. You're saying give me the best chance for an upset here. What's the
I don't
upset?
think Notre Dame beating Georgia is I mean, technically, by a point spread, it's close. But,
Right.
The upset games are, tonight potentially, and certainly Arizona State, if they can knock, I mean, those are double-digit point spreads. I don't think anybody who looks at Georgia, Notre Dame beating Georgia is like a big upset. I don't think you're paying attention to Georgia. Georgia doesn't have Brock Bowers or Ladd McConkey anymore. They do not have a lot of weapons for a first-time quarterback to play against a good defense. ASU will be interesting. I did a big story on Cam Skattebo. He is one of the more remarkable stories going in college football. I mean, this was a team picked to finish last in the Big 12 in the preseason, and now they got a puncher's chance. I don't know how they're going to slow down Texas. I mean, if you look at the teams who have given the Longhorns problems, it's been Georgia and teams that have, elite front players. Arizona State doesn't have that. I'm sure they'll be really aggressive. I don't know if they can get to Ewers and really disrupt him enough to force him into the mistakes. And I'm sure Texas is going to try to gang tackle and do everything they can to slow down Cam Skattebo. But look, nobody thought Arizona State would have gotten this far. They're playing with a ton of confidence. You hear what both Skattebo and his quarterback have said in the run up to this game. I mean, they've been doubted a lot most of their lives, and they've proven people wrong every step of the way. Maybe this is the next step of that.
Your best guess, Bruce, in a couple minutes I have left with you, your best guess by the end of this month, January, coming up, Quinn Ewers will be either in A, the portal, or B, getting ready for the scouting combine. Which one?
My guess is he will be in the portal. And that's just a
Why is
guess.
that?
But
Why
yeah,
is
I
that?
think he's in a similar situation to Cam Ward and some other guys last year where I think the NFL doesn't look at him as a top 50 pick. They look at him as, maybe a second, third, fourth round quarterback. Now, maybe in the next couple of games, he will go on a roll. I mean, the concern you hear from scouts and definitely from SEC coaches who respect him and think he's got, good arm talent and think he's a really good college quarterback. It's when he has to ad lib and improvise is when the mistakes really happen. And he has been inconsistent. There's another piece of it, which I know we've talked about on the show, several times, is durability issues. He's not been able to make it through a full season without, missing some games, but like that's, there's been some other quarterbacks who've had those issues too, but it's been held against them. We know Arch Manning is waiting in the wings. I would be shocked if Arch Manning is not the starting quarterback at Texas in, next year. But for, going forward, the question I think that Quinn Ewers people is going to have to sort out is if he is a third or fourth round projection, does it make more sense financially as well for him? He
Financially.
could probably get, I know of quarterbacks who have done less than Quinn Ewers have in college who are getting 1.3, 1.5, 1.7 million. Quinn Ewers could probably, double that, maybe even get to 5 million or so from some other schools. Is that the
Wow.
financial play? I mean, do you sit there and look, okay, nobody thought at this time last year that Cam Ward was going to be a top 50 pick. Now, a lot of people I've talked to think he's going to be a top 5 pick. The idea that he got, low 7 figures to go to Miami for a season and then parlayed it into a big draft step up. I think there could be that formula certainly for Quinn Ewers potentially. Again, they're different style quarterbacks with different, one guy was a no-star when he came out of Texas in high school in Cam Ward. The other guy was the fivest of 5 stars and has played a lot on a big stage. But again, and Quinn Ewers also has Steve Sarkisian, who's as good as there is in terms of as a quarterback guy and as a play caller. So I don't know what the thought process is going to be all the way through. Like I said, for all we know, he could lead Texas to a national title and maybe gets hot in those games and has people feeling like he could be a first rounder. I mean, but if you ask me right now, my hunch is that he may be in the portal for a big price tag.
Yeah, Bruce, there's a report out right now that he's got a $6 million offer from some school.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing with some of that. I don't want to be totally dismissive of it. Like, there's so many reports about like a lot of this agent space when it comes to the NIL world in college football is wildly unpredictable and wildly speculative. There are agents trying to set and reset the market. I would take a lot of that stuff with a big grain of salt, because when you talk to people in the middle of it, they're like, yeah, that's not true. Again, I don't know if that specific one, I wouldn't be surprised if he could get $4 or $5 million. I don't know about 6, and I don't know, again, that like who's offering it, and because some of the money stuff that gets thrown out there a little bit, it's also, you hear from some other people who are in the middle of it. They're like, no, the reason why somebody floated that is because they're trying to get that and trying to raise the bar. So I would be cautious on a lot of the dollar figures of, it depends on where it comes from. I mean, the only stuff that I feel confident in, like even talking about, is when I've heard it from some coach who's directly involved in it, not from somebody who's like, it's stuff I learned to take with a grain of salt. And even some of that, I still am like kind of suspicious of.
Well, Bruce, I appreciate the time. You're going to Pasadena? You're going to
I am. Yeah. Went to media day yesterday. I can't wait for that game. And
nothing
it's
like
going to be great.
Nothing like the Rose Bowl on a beautiful day. Hopefully it'll be a Chamber of Commerce day, and that setting for a big-time college football game like Oregon and the Ohio State. That's what it's all about. Have a great time, Bruce, and Happy New Year to you. We'll see you next year.
Thanks, Rich. Happy New Year, guys.
Happy New Year,
Bruce Feldman of
see you,
Fox
buddy.
Sports and The Athletic right there. Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku Channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.